Okay, good morning, everybody, again. Let's go to the next slide. I'm letting you read this one here. I'm not going to read it to you. Okay, next slide. Adam, do you want to take this one or?
Oh, you're muted, Adam.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm happy to take this. So I think our main focus in today's session is to really focus with school personnel on how you incorporate upstream prevention work into a strategic 5-year plan, how you break it down from the 5-year plan to the 1-year continuous improvement plan and make this just kind of a part of your operating ecosystem. I'm guessing, like most of you, like the Blaine County School District feels very busy all the time. It feels like you always have new initiatives, new things that you're being inundated and asked to complete. And what we found is you have to be very laser focused with your plan and what you're trying to accomplish to really have any success in outcomes. And so we set up a 5-year strategic plan and then break that down into 5 1-year plans to try and limit the focus on where our attention is. And I believe Superintendent Foudy wants to talk about how we go about our strategic planning process just from a high level, not saying that it's right or wrong. It's just one model of how a district has done that. And then I'll break it down from there into more of the individual 1-year plans and give some examples of goals of how we do it here and how we've kind of helped set up walls to drown out the noise and really stay focused on what we're trying to do, including in the upstream prevention space.
Perfect. Next slide. So, yeah, strategic planning is critical, and having kind of the 5-year look that Adam was talking about helps you hold the long game. Um, it also grounds, I think, your board in resource allocation as needed. So, when we have it in the strategic plan and we're building the budget, it's easier to justify certain expenditures if there are any. And this particular work doesn't require a lot, but it is very important. Let's go to next slide. These are references from our actual strategic plan. Um, we built this plan a few years ago, and you know, many of you are familiar with this, but just a high level overview. Started with a huge good response from the community on a survey, and then we conducted several listening sessions in our district in both English and Spanish. Really wanted to get feedback from our patrons and our families. Um, we learned that to reach the Hispanic community, one of the most comfortable places for them was the hall at the local church, the Catholic church. And so that's where we held that listening session there. And it was conducted completely in Spanish. And from that, we had several goals. So our strategic plan includes everything from facilities to behavioral mental health and academic goals as well. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, and I'm going to share one thing, and then I'll turn it to Adam. Um, I had the opportunity a few years ago to listen to Pulitzer Prize winning author Anthony Doerr um, talk about his novel, and at the end, one of the guests asked him the question, how do you write so many characters with so much depth? And he paused for a second, and then he said, I think authors are like artists, and each character is its own canvas, and I never let the paint dry on any one canvas until the novel is done. And what I took from that into strategic planning is we can't let the paint dry. So when, if you look at our board meeting agendas, the items on the agenda have a strategic plan reference to them. We are regularly reminding ourselves of those goals and objectives within the strategic plan and building them onto agendas for leadership team meetings and for the board as well. And that keeps it alive so that it's not just a book on the shelf. And here we go. And then breaking it down into the one year plans. This is not just a plan, it's a promise to the community. And we are fulfilling that promise every day.
Perfect. Can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, so these three goals are what our district set for our schools as far as our 1 year plan, beyond the academic achievement goals that are incorporated into the continuous improvement plan. And in our district, we're kind of a medium-sized district. We have 8 schools. We have a 1A rural school, an alternative school, a dual immersion school. And so the challenge is trying to set goals that are broad enough that every school can feel like I'm connected to this and we can make this goal work in our unique setting, and also that they're narrow enough that we actually accomplish as a district progress towards our strategic plan. And so you're trying to achieve that tight and loose balance. We limit our goals at 3. We feel like once you go beyond 3, your chances of actually achieving any of those goals drop dramatically with every additional goal that you add. So trying to stay very laser focused. And for this work, you can see in particular on bullet point 3, this is where we bring in our upstream mental health prevention work. And then in a lot of the feedback I read from the first session, I was amazed at the wonderful work and ideas that were being implemented in PBIS across different districts in the state. And what we tried to do with this goal in particular is how do both of those fit under the same umbrella? PBIS is a great structure for your school, but I think when you start to think a little bit more globally about what can your community accomplish as far as upstream prevention and mental health support, I think that lens zooms out a little bit, and I think both can kind of work in parallel with each other at the same time. You can be working on your PBIS infrastructure, your tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 supports, but also engage the community in a different way about upstream prevention for youth as a whole. When we first started working with communities for youth, we had a meeting with Megan, and what really sold me on this work was when Megan said, the power in this work is it doesn't just fall on the school community. This is your broader community having a really in-depth discussion and each taking part of the lift. And it seems so much more manageable and so much more powerful. So as your teams kind of consider this work today, I would say our goal or our challenge to you is trying to think, along with the great PBIS work that your school building is doing, how can you engage the broader community to be a part of this upstream prevention process and bring them into the conversation? So with that, I'd like to pass it over to Norm, and he's going to talk about how Marsing School District has accomplished this, and it's just awesome.
Well, thanks, Adam. Next slide, please. And you can go ahead and jump to the next slide. So, well, thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here to talk to you and really talk to you about the things that we've been doing in Marsing. And as we're talking about strategic planning and forming those long range goals, all the work that we've been doing really has been formed around some specific intent and really looking at how can we better serve our students, try to make sure that we are addressing the barriers that are negatively impacting them and their families, and how can we make the experience overall more positive. So what you see here is really, this is the Marsing School District. All of our district is here, from the elementary school, the secondary school, and then the round building is our community school, the hub. It's the old middle school. Next slide, please. And really, we can't, for us in Marsing, we can't really talk about strategic planning without addressing our community school work. We started this work in late 2019. Well, it actually started before that, but when the building was, we were renovating the building and preparing, we needed to try to look at how can we better serve our students and the community. And what we're seeing here is that Marsing itself, if you don't know where Marsing is at, it's about 40 miles from Boise. It's a very agriculturally based community, only about 1,300 people. In our district, we're about 860 kids K through 12. So we're a small district, but Marsing itself has very limited resources. And so our goal and objective and what we started our strategic planning with was how can we better serve our students and their families by trying to establish partnerships with other groups, other service agencies, and bringing them into Marsing because they can't, because of the size, can't really physically set up there and be sustainable. So how can we create a center that would be based around that and to be able to bring those services in. And so just to quickly talk about the hub, I mean, we have a school-based health center that have both primary care and mental health counseling in there. We have 3 classrooms of early childhood ed. We have opportunities for after-hours learning. We also have the only community food pantry and clothing pantry. And so really we've been looking at how can we better serve our community and reduce those barriers. And this has been very intentional and very strategic on what we've been doing. As we were doing this work, we'd also spent a couple of years with our staff focusing our professional development on trauma-informed practices. How can we better serve our kids and truly try to understand what's going on, because what their behavior is in class is not just because if they're being difficult or struggling, it may have nothing to do with that classroom setting. It's more than likely something on the outside. So how can we train our teachers to be better practitioners and really understand what it means to have kids that are facing outside influences that are impacting the classroom? And so we spent 2 years really focusing on that. And then we were lucky enough to be awarded a grant. We were one of 3 school districts in the state of Idaho. It was Kimberly, Glens Ferry, and Marsing to be awarded a Project Aware grant. And what that basically involved was, as we've talked about earlier, as far as PBIS, we had PBIS district wide. It allowed for us to bring sources of strength in for a suicide prevention opportunity. And then we also allowed us to bring in off-site counselors to our hub and to have them housed there so that our students can have easy access to those services should they need it for those tier 3 interventions. And so it has really been intentional along with that. So next slide, please. That all leads into as far as our work with Communities for Youth, with Megan, and with our other partners, in order to try to continue to address those needs. This started when back in 2022, we as a school district did not have a school nurse, and so what we had received a grant from Blue Cross of Idaho Foundation for Health, and that was in order to be able to establish a pilot project and to be able to show the relevance of actually having a school nurse. And so this was the actual first time that we had administered a student wellness survey for the purpose of showing the relevance of having a school nurse. And so that and all of this really surrounds the first 2 times we administered that survey, we were under the old opt-out format. And so that's important for anyone who's considering the survey because those standards have changed. Back then, we shared the survey. If a parent did not want their child to take the survey, they would sign the opt-out form and we wouldn't administer the survey to them. But we surveyed all middle and high school students who were okay to take that survey. And going into the survey, we really thought that our issue was going to be vaping. And okay, how are we going to be able to address that? And that's more of a reactionary perception of that. But when we administered the survey, we found some very alarming facts about our student population, and so that helped us really focus and become much more intentional on how we're trying to address those concerns. And so we then took that information and we developed some very intentional campaigns and strategies around how we're doing that, how we're impacting that, and also involving our partners with Communities for Youth, who have been fantastic on helping us first administer the survey, but then also to break down the data and become very specific and intentional in regards to that feedback. And then the next steps is working with our other grant partners, Southwest District Health, in order to really implement a strategic plan on how we continue to move forward and make positive influences. Next slide, please. So what you see here is one of the most alarming things that came out of that initial survey that was administered. As I said, we were under the impression that okay, vaping was going to be our issue, but we found out that 66% of our middle and high school students were suffering from moderate to severe depression, and this is not just asking them a question, are you depressed? This is actually incorporating the PHQ-9 into this survey as a clinical assessment in order to make that determination. So anyone who qualifies under that category should technically be in counseling. So to know that 66% of our kids were in that position was quite alarming. And so how could we take steps in order to move forward and address those concerns? Next slide. This is just a little bit more as we started looking at that information and how can we break that down. This is more grade level and gender specific. So trying to understand was that boys, is that girls, what grade levels, and so really trying to focus on how we continue to address those issues. Another thing that came up during that survey was that only 32% of our kids, or at least the perception was only 32% of our kids were actually nice to each other. And so is that a correlation? Because we have students not being kind to each other and mistreating other people. And so does that lead to more depression? And so that was, as we continued to work through things, became a factor that we needed to at least consider. Next slide. So as we tried to continue to address our needs and looking at this information, we decided to take on and launch a full campaign on trying to address and bring awareness to the student depression, bring awareness to lack of kindness in our school district. And so we had and scheduled specific events in order to target students and then also to bring awareness with our families and the community. And so these are just some of the flyers that we've used in the activities that we had scheduled in order to try to address those needs and try to make sure that our families are understanding and then trying to show what resources we have available to them through our counselors, not only the school-based counselors, but then our offsite counselors that are housed in our community school. And if there was a need in order to use them, we could. We also used our sources of strength student leaders and how could we implement them and try to bring that strategy into more of addressing those needs and those concerns. Next slide, please. So this is just some quick images of some of the different things that we've done. When we found out, once we found out that initial survey result and we launched those campaigns, we had really tried to focus on decreasing those areas. So these are just images, and then as we administered the survey for the second time, that's where we really started to use that upstream prevention model and trying to bring in the community because the issue is much larger than just a school issue. It's a community issue overall. And so as the whole upstream prevention strategy involves, it's a community approach. How can we get out and not just be reactionary? It's not just putting vape sensors in a bathroom. It's looking at how can we implement things, have strategies for long range in order to do that. And so these are our data walks that we've that we presented. After the second time that we administered the survey, we shared those survey results in comparison with our staff, our student leaders of sources of strength, because it's their data, and then also with the community. And then worked on developing continued strategies on how to reduce those depression rates, how to address the kindness issue. And we had seen very positive results after that first year and have continued to see positive results as we continue on. Next slide, please. The areas that we had really focused on after we had met and that second time and looking at some of the issues that were really facing our students was their stress level. And then also looking at areas of social isolation, the feeling completely isolated from other people, having no connection. And so the preventative measure in regards to addressing those depression rates is making sure they had some sort of social connection, whether that's with a peer or with their parents or a trusted adult at school. So that was a priority. Another focus from those group meetings and those action steps was how can we increase physical activity? How can we provide more opportunities for our kids to be physically active, which in turn, according to with our survey, was showing that kids who are more physically active had lower depression rates, which seems a pretty basic concept, but how could we become more intentional about providing those opportunities for our kids? Next slide. And so here's what we've seen as far as a progression over time. So that April of 2022, when we administered the survey that first time, that 66%, and through that strategic work and the strategies that we've had as far as to make this a long range goal, we've seen gradual decline from 66% all the way down to last October when the survey was administered down to 24%. And we're very proud of the work that we're doing and how we're trying to positively impact our kids. I will say we just administered the survey on October 15th, and last night we actually had our community data walk, and I was very happy we combined it because as you are trying to involve community and parents, you need to be able to entice them to come in. We will use dinners, but that doesn't always work. And so we combined the activity last night with a movie night. So try to hook the kids to come in for the movie night. And as the parents are there, let's go talk about data. And we broke that out. So we have an English version, and then we have a room that is completely Spanish version. And because almost half of our population are Hispanic families, it's very important that we get that input from them. And so I am happy to report that the most recent survey does show that our trend continues to go down. We're now at 22.7% with the most recent survey. But we still see areas that we need to address. And suicide ideation, ironically, well, not ironically, but it makes sense, is right at 22.8%. And so seeing that the kids who are reporting that moderate to severe depression, according to those statistics, look like it's the same ones who are showing signs of this suicide ideation. So we know that there are issues we need to continue to move forward on, but involving the community, and we had well over 100 people attend that event last night. And so I'm really looking forward to Communities for Youth disseminating that data to us. We have it's called the Marsing Project, and we have a whole advisory committee. I have 30 people on that advisory committee. So all of those results coming from the community data walk, we'll do one next Friday with the staff, and then on December 11th with our students, we'll gather all that information and continue to make those future plans on how we continue to move forward and hopefully continue to decrease those depression rates and look at how can we continue to expand that not only in the school, but district-wide or community-wide. Next slide, please. And then this was just last year's, just because I had shown the breakdown of individual gender and grade level. This was the comparison in the October range. And so seeing some of those, and as you see, like 12th grade boys, there are always those factors that could come in and impact. We've questioned on regards to that high number there. That was also a same week that we administered the survey, it was the same week that we were had our football team going to state, and a lot of those boys were also on that team. So that may be a correlation there. Next slide, please. But as we continue to talk about how we involve the staff, and we're coming to a close here with the Marsing part, is we talked about the social connection and how can we make sure that kids have somebody that they can connect with, whether that's a peer or a parent or a trusted adult at school. And this is professional development that we did last year, and we have the benefit, obviously, of being a small school. So this may not work to the same extent with a larger school, but we basically inside this is the center of our hub. We have every child's picture of our district up on the wall by grade level. And what we ask our parent or our staff to do is if they feel that they have some sort of connection or they know something about that student, we had asked them to put a dot by that student, trying to identify what kids do we know that have a connection here at school and who may not. And again, this was our perception. So there are some areas that, as far as that, may not be completely valid, but this gave us a great opportunity to see what students definitely had a connection, and it had to be within the last year or two. We didn't want an elementary teacher saying, "Well, I had that student 5 years ago. I know about them." We want somebody who is relevant currently. And it also gave us an opportunity to see what students did not have a connection. If they had no dots or maybe even one dot, we then had each building develop strategies and goals on how can we get those kids to be more socially connected to the school, and how can we assign staff in order to have that, try to develop that connection with those students. So we're trying to fill in those gaps where they may be with students who are less connected. And then the last one, and then real quick, wanted to talk about the extension into the community, because this is not only the school district, but also district as far as community wide. And this is our partnerships through Marsing itself. With you see up in the top left-hand corner, this is a partnership with the City of Marsing, the Wahi County Health Coalition, and the school district. And we raised money in order to put in a fitness court in the community, actually just outside of the hub. And there are no clubs, no athletic clubs or workout areas in Marsing. So we were able to do this, and we actually use survey data from our survey and showing the progress that we've made specific to physical fitness and reducing depression and social connection, and which allowed us to raise money. And we were able to write a $50,000 grant to contribute to the $200,000 it took to build this, just from using our survey data and showing those positive results. We also have been able to install a disc golf course on the campus, open for the community to use. We will see, we wrote a grant to Specialized Bikes, and we were awarded 25 bikes for our middle school students to be able to learn to ride bikes. And then the most recent thing, how it relates to the complete community, is also looking at, we've been able to secure funds for an outdoor physical education classroom in the form of a track, which Marsing, we don't have a track. And so it's a dirt area. And so we've been able to secure funds, and that will not only be able to be used by the school, but then by the community also, to incorporate that physical activity to help reduce those depression rates district wide. The last thing that we do is also we open up, because we have a gym that's not used for part of a day. We also open up that gym twice a week for senior citizens to do a fit and fall prevention class. Again, trying to hit community members from our youth all the way through seniors. So, Adam or Jim, I'll turn it over to you for the next.
Thanks, Norman. That's awesome. I mean, I think the Marsing example gives a really good vision of what this process can be from the very beginning, from data collection to engaging your community and analyzing that data, creating outcome plans, and your work is just so impressive. Um, what I wanted to highlight is just the timeline of the work. We're very similar in what our timeline is with Marsing, and I think that's really important if you're a district who hasn't done this type of planning or work yet, is to be very cognizant of when you're doing each step of the process. For us, we survey students in the fall, in October, and then the turnaround is we're ready to start unpacking data as an administrative team in November, and then early December, a larger community team. And the reason that that's so important is for us, we're starting to set our CIP goals for the next school year by January, because that's when staffing decisions are starting to be made and we're starting to secure professional development and submit budget requests by early spring. And so it allows your community time to wrestle with the data this current year, but it also allows district administration kind of that glance forward of what do we need to prepare for as far as creating an actionable plan next year. And so hopefully from Norm's presentation on Marsing, everybody has kind of a vision of what this process could look like. It'll look different district to district, but that's one great example of what it can look like. And for the next part of our presentation, what we thought might be helpful would be showing you what type of data that you can receive during the survey process, and then kind of brainstorming different ways of how you would turn that data into action in your community in goal setting, budgeting, and planning. And so I've put together some data from one of the schools in our district. It was their last year data. I'm going to leverage the collective wisdom of the group here, and you're going to solve all of this school's problems by giving us great ideas that I can put into a notebook. And so if we can go to the next slide, I'll let you take a minute. Here are the bright spots of data from this particular school.
I want to just throw in there as you're reading this, the 72% participation, that we really celebrated that because with the opt-in now, it's really difficult to get everybody to, I mean, 72% opted in grade 6 through 12. And hats off to our technology team and the administration for embedding the opt-in in an easy format for parents on PowerSchool.
And I think this slide is just as important as the next slide, which is going to highlight some of the data challenges. This gives the community a moment to really reflect on, what's going right and why are we seeing such positive returns, and make sure you're continuing to invest in those initiatives or those things that are paying off. So, okay. So here's our positive, and then if we can go to the next slide, here's some of our challenge areas that were highlighted through the data. Okay. And so what I'd like to do on the next slide is open up some discussion. If this was data representing your school, what are some potential ways just within the school building community you would start to respond or organize a response to this data? Which areas would you prioritize as the most critical to respond to? And then what ways would you engage the larger or broader community in the upstream prevention work based on this data? And so I'm going to ask some people to come off of mute, if you will, and share some ideas to those three questions. And hopefully we can have a great brainstorming session. And like I said, you can help me with some ideas on this particular building, possible ways to respond.
Adam, sorry, should we go back to the data or what do you think?
We can put these
Oh, side by
questions
side.
into the chat here, and then I'll go back to this data.
Awesome. Thank
And
you.
then either Hong An or Jocelyn, will you put some of those questions into the chat for us?
So I'd love it if anybody would volunteer and respond some ideas and maybe start by identifying your community or your school, because I believe the responses look so different. Every district in Idaho is so unique in the resources that they have. The community perceptions vary, I mean, drastically district to district. And so I would love people to kind of play the role that this was the data in their district and talk about maybe what those steps might look like.
Benson, I see you came off of mute. Do you want to go first?
Sure. I guess to start it off, I'd like to just ask Norm a question. My name is Benson Blair. I'm a social worker at Wood High School in Blaine County School District. Seems like when we present the data from Communities for Youth, we get a pretty apparent lack of buy-in or attendance from community members. I'm wondering how you went about promoting that to bring people in to just see the data in the first place. I think that's probably, in my
Sure.
opinion, the place to start.
Well, and we've had a variation of attendance, and we became very intentional this year. Last year, we had a total of 7 people show up last year. And so we became very intentional on how we were approaching it this year. We did, and this is through a grant fund that we sent out mailers to every single household in our community. We also continued to hand out flyers. We were doing promotional as far as the texts, the emails, and everything. And then we made sure that we really tied the kids' movie in and made sure we hit the elementary hard so that the elementary kids really wanted to be enticed to come. And we even tried to reserve a game truck to try to get the older kids, but because of our location, they wouldn't come out to us. So we were trying to use other things. We also did a dinner, and so other things to entice them to come in. And that's where we had over 100 people this time.
Thank you.
Alexis, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so to kind of go to the questions, but then also something that I saw in a neighboring community. So I live in the West Ada School District. Just for context, I used to live in Lewiston and be a part of their school community. So two of the data points are really interesting to me when I look at them. One, 51% of students are uncomfortable talking about personal topics with a mental health provider. That's really interesting to me. And then the one that I think is potentially like could be something that maybe is more easily addressed is the 25% of students believe that students at the school are nice to each other, meaning that 75% don't. So those two topics I think are interesting. And I saw most recently the Middleton School District. They had this big community night at their high school. They called it Viking Connection. And I had a friend, I was asked to go, couldn't be there, but I had another friend who was asked to be at a table there. And over 800 people walked into that school. That includes parents and teachers, and parents, teachers, and students. And this friend of mine who was there said, Middleton really has it dialed in. They figured out how to get these kids with their parents to the schools. Now, I will say that the reason their school district has this is because instead of doing parent-teacher conferences, which they have said has like a near zero turnout for their high schools, they are then required to have a community night one time a semester. So they go all in and they get way more parents to show up at this one night than they do for parent-teacher conferences, and they can interact with them there, and they have workshops and different things like that. But they require in some of these classes for their students to either attend a certain type of community meeting, and also in some classes, these kids can get some extra credit for attending these different things. So anyways, I think an event like that is fascinating and could potentially pop into those two questions. And I think asking a parent, like bringing that one up to a parent group or both of them up to a parent group would be really fascinating. That's my insight. Sorry, that was long.
That was great. We also had somebody in the chat said something similar, Alexis. Elizabeth said, I'd be particularly curious about the third bullet point illustrating 51% of students being uncomfortable to talk with mental health providers. I would want to know who the students are comfortable talking to about personal topics and target getting some training or resources to those people. And then curious about the reasons behind student discomfort in talking to mental health providers. Would love to hear thoughts from other folks on the call. Oh, Anne, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we you picked good data, Adam, because this is like a pretty common situation that we see, especially when some schools like want to know, like, we really love it at C4Y when folks are like, well, but how is like my school different than my district, or like how is this grade different than the district, similar to what Norm was talking about. And for me, that was kind of the point that I really zeroed in on, like, what's going on in that school building that's different than the rest of the district that folks are not feeling as connected, right? Like, did they get a whole new staff in 1 year? So they didn't get to go through the like activity where they went through and like found each student. Is it that school doesn't have an aftercare program or a school breakfast or something? Like, I mean, there's tons of problems that schools can be a partner in solving, but I think something you and Jim have really iterated for the Communities for Youth team and Megan and I over and over again is like, that doesn't mean we can like actually make a difference in each of those areas, right? Like we can be a partner and support some decisions, but we can't always be the lead partner. And so I think when there is data about like, oh, this school is slightly different than the district, or the school is doing something, whether it's an area for improvement or something that they're going above and beyond, that's always really exciting because it's like, let's go talk to the principal, let's go talk to the lead counselor, the social worker, and like see what that special sauce is. Because sometimes it really is just like one practice that someone's just been doing faithfully for a couple years and it's really easily replicable. So that one really stuck out to me, was the one about the school connection being a little bit lower than the rest of the district and having the school think more about why that might be.
Thanks, Ann. And one thing I'd like to highlight, like you can definitely go at this alone, but what I appreciate of our partnership with Communities for Youth is they help with data, the survey administration and data collection and unpacking that data. But also they come in and they do student focus group follow-ups, specifically gleaning more information from students as these topics start to kind of pop or be identified. And I think that follow-up student interviews or focus groups really yield some powerful responses from students that help a district know how to pivot and respond in a meaningful way, or a community.
And Adam, if I can just real quick interject that, and I would like agree. And as far as the work with Communities for Youth has been outstanding. When you had that national student well-being survey, if your district did choose to take that, you may get it a year or more later after you've administered the survey, and it's old data. And then you take that, and I know that when we would do it, okay, you'd look at it, and then it would find its way onto the shelf, and there would be no action as a result of that. The benefit of this survey and our partnership with Communities for Youth to help us really break down the data and then help us develop some actionable steps involving the community and students and everyone else, it makes it more real, it makes it more actionable and current. And it's definitely worthwhile when you take an actionable step to make a difference.
In our local district, we have an incredible network of nonprofit organizations who dedicate a lot of their services towards youth. And having this data has, in my opinion, united a lot of the work between different organizations, whether it's the YMCA, I can go through a list of wonderful organizations in this community. And I think, again, that just helps it. It doesn't all feel like it's on the school district when you start to create that ecosystem of synergy around these upstream prevention issues. It feels more meaningful and more manageable.
We've got a question from Sarah. Sarah, do you want to go ahead?
Hi, yeah, thank you. I'm gonna leave my camera off. I'm quite under the weather, but my name is Sarah, and I run a nonprofit in Payette County focused on mental health, and we have started a drug-free coalition. And I guess my question is like, I have been working with parents and the schools and schools and administrators. Y'all are doing such great work, and you have so much on your plate. What can we do as a coalition to collaborate with schools more and take some of this work off of their shoulders and help? Obviously, I'm here with our school district today, but I mean, I've got 12 or 15 people in my coalition now. Like, what? I'm just curious, like, what can we do to get the community ready for this work happening in the next, 5 years right now? I have all that vaping data and we're supposed to make a strategic plan around it, but I don't feel like that's in sync with what our children need. So I just want to throw that out there because the community wants to support you. I have so many people here that I've, got connections to now outside the school district, but I haven't been able to figure out, where's my place here to help you?
I, I guess as far as from my perspective, and I appreciate your work and what you're doing and trying to help with the district and trying to get more people involved. For us in Marsing, and that's been part of our advisory committee, the Marsing Project Advisory Committee. I've tried to expand that committee out because this isn't work that just the school district can take on, and where there's only a handful of people that are really pushing on that. How can we broaden it out? And that is truly that the Iceland project, the upstream prevention model, is getting more people involved. And so as we've been trying to elicit more assistance from whether it's the community and the county and all those different groups, trying to get everyone in the room. And we're actually continuing to have those discussions for us is who else, even though we have 30 people on that committee, who else do we need to have in the room to make a real impact, to make sure it's not just a school initiative, it's an overall community initiative. And so that's what we've been trying to do is trying to bring the people in that we can, and then for them to brainstorm, how do we broaden that out? So at least that's from us. Adam, do you have anything, Jim?
Yeah, no, I would agree. Superintendent Foudy often references just a simple math formula of how often students are in instructional time. And when you pencil it out, it's roughly about 13% of the calendar year. And so our network of nonprofits and community partners who've engaged in this work have really embraced what can we do in that other percentage of time when students are in the school to be supportive of upstream prevention work. And we've had after school centers, we've had discussion of a youth center in the community. We've had parent groups talk about like digital safety or cyberbullying and prevention or education for parents. It's really branched out into a lot of different areas in the community. And I feel like that's extremely supportive of the district.
Yeah, it's so critical. The 13% is the time that they're in the buildings. And then if you take out lunch and passing periods, it drops to 9%. That's if a student is in attendance 100% of the instructional days and never absent for any reason, including athletics. So leveraging that time outside of the school is so valuable. And it takes the community, it takes partners, it takes everybody.
Sarah, thank you so much for that thought and that question. And truly, just having somebody in the community who wants to be more involved is such a great first step. So thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, like we're here. I have law enforcement, I have paramedics, I've got city council people. I'm starting to work with the county. They have a ton of opiate funds. Like, There are people out here, so if you need help, like let us know, and we'd love to work with Payette and any district. Just like in general, there are tons of people out here who have been affected by substance use disorder, and this is the solution in the long term.
Thank you. And
Sarah, that's incredible.
I saw that you put your contact information or your website into the chat, so thanks for sharing that. We've only got a couple minutes left, so I want to just read a couple things that were put into the chat, and then Adam, if we can go through the asynchronous activity just for a minute, and then we'll close out. So Miriam said, mental health is still overcoming the negative stigma. Perhaps when the schools have a parent night, they can include all these resources available to them, but also include mental health agencies involved with these. Mental health is still battling the negative stigma. Oh, sorry, that's kind of the same thing. And then the next one was from Sarah Seppa. We have a parent and teacher group that has formed called the 5B Digital Wellness Network. They've created a parent pledge to raise awareness about screen time and social media. More education out in the community about these issues could help reduce time on social media, importance, looking good, and increase sleep. And then a link to that as well. So thank you guys for sharing those. Thank you guys for coming off of mute and talking to. We always appreciate. The best thing about Echo is when we have folks who are contributing to the conversation, because we all learn from each other. So before we close out today, we did just want to quickly cover the asynchronous challenge. So these are for folks who are in the cohort. However, if you are not in the cohort, you are also more than welcome to do this. For our cohort members, just a reminder, if you are on a school team, only one person needs to submit their asynchronous activity. Just make sure everybody's names are on there who are on your school team. And Adam, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, so our asynchronous challenge, in particular for folks in school districts, is to start making a plan with a team about what this could look like for next year. If your district has not participated in really a upstream prevention program, start to backward plan a timeline of how you would start with gaining opt-in from parents and administering a survey to unpacking data, a community data walk, and then implementing some sort of a community response to the data. And then if you are a district who has maybe dabbled or is farther down the road in doing this, maybe starting to think, how can we make this more systemic by incorporating it into our strategic and CIP goals? And what will those goals be for next year? How can we strategically apply resources to maximize achieving those goals? And so hopefully this opens up some great conversations with your district team in the next couple of weeks, and you're excited to move forward on the upstream prevention journey.
Thank you, Adam. And again, that asynchronous challenge, this should be open now on the cohort page, so you'll find the instructions there as well. This will be due at 11 a.m. on November 21st. So make sure that you get that done with your school team sooner rather than later. Again, that's 11 a.m. Mountain Time on November 21st, right before Thanksgiving break. We are going to be back in 5 weeks on Friday, December 12th. That is our third session. We'll be doing a deep dive into risk and protective factors, and that will be presented by Megan Smith and Janelle Stoffer. So we hope to see you guys then. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye. Thank you.